Oscino Fly, back with another review, and this time I wanted to go to actually video review, not more or less music review. Now, if you don't know that Netflix has basically brought back most of the shows on UPN, Moesha, The Parkers, Half and Half, The Game, and 101. I wanted to take this time to review some of those shows from a today's standpoint. Now, me personally, I've watched all these shows. I've actually liked all these shows. I'm a big fan of sitcoms. It was one of the reasons why I got into film, because my love for black sitcoms and some of these shows. I feel like even though they was on black networks and people do like them, they are really forgetting, because at least in a black standpoint, like all these not forgetting, they're more or less of an afterthought. If you were to say the top 3 black sitcoms, most people tell you The Cosby Show, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and Martin. And then everything else is more or less of an afterthought. So, and with that being said, a lot of these shows really get left, especially some people that, you know, even though I believe colorism is real, a lot of people forget that, and especially in the 90s, in the 90s and the early 2000s, there was a load of black representation, especially black women in these shows. So, from dark to light. So you had your plethora of beautiful black people, especially beautiful black women on there. And to me personally, this brings out, I'm glad they're bringing this so it can show people, yes, there were a vast majority of black sitcoms on there that were actually really good. Back then, I always thought Moesha was really good, but you know, I don't think it was my type of, if the audience wasn't pertaining to me anyway, but I still thought it was a good show. With that being said, this review is going to be on Moesha, since it's basically the first thing that came out on Netflix. Now, what is Moesha about? It's basically about a teenager juggling school, friendships, and romance. Previously the head of the household, she is learning to love and trust her father's new wife. While at home, she does her best to be the glue that helps hold her family together. Hilarity ensues. There's some comedies in there and all that stuff. So I sat here and binge watched all 6 seasons of Moesha. And what do I think about it? I think it's really good until like the last 2 seasons. And here's what I think about. First things first, there are things to mention. One, I like seeing stable black families on TV. Like, I understand, like, not everybody's gonna have a 2-parent household, have good jobs, good quality jobs, and, you know, not everybody's gonna be the hustles and all that. You gotta have, you know, there are houses where single mothers, there are houses where, you know, some people are struggling, like Good Times. And you know, this is sort of less, they're not really rich, they're just upper middle class, like I would say. They're more or less upper middle class. So with that being said, I like seeing that type of format. Brandy herself, obviously she done had some acting roles before this, and you know, also being a singer. She's really is the main focus. So her being the main focus, I think she does a good job through all 6 seasons, in my opinion. But a little iffy on the last 2 seasons, but we'll get to that later. But as far as the black family goes, the stepmother Shirley Ralph that plays Dee, I love her. I think she's a beautiful woman, but she also brings a sort of poise to that show. Like, she's just not a pushover. She's actually like, she's stern when she needs to be, she's nurturing when she needs to be. She has a great balance. So that's one thing I'll say. The father, I think his name is William Allen Young, Frank. He's stern. He's like any other father in the 90s. You're stern, you're strict, you're very overprotective of your baby. You don't want her going, you want her to more focus on school and studies and going to college than to be chasing a dream. So he's very traditional. A lot of people will look at it as very misogynist, but he's very, you know, other people look at it as very traditional, depending on how you will look at it. Because there are real think pieces about this, and people talk about how he's probably one of the worst dads, and which I disagree with fully. As far as the characters go, I think this is a solid cast. It's a very solid cast, especially from the top to bottom. Some of the more funnier people are obviously Countess Vaughn, who plays Kim, Shar Jackson, who plays Niecy, Lamont Bentley, that plays Hakeem. Like, when you get Moesha, Kim, Niecy, Hakeem together, it's basically just chemistry. And you can tell there's chemistry flowing off. They flow off with each other well. The banter between Niecy and Hakeem is really funny. Sometimes even when Kim was boy crazy over Hakeem, that was really funny. Moesha herself, she could be an asshole sometimes. She's not I don't think she's a very good friend, because she's always selfish, and it's always about her from the beginning. It's like, you can tell, like, she kind of makes it about her, which is, you should, you are the main character of your show, but it's very evident in her personality too. Like, it's really about her and all that other stuff. She butts into people's business. She kind of like be nosy. Anytime where, but it do look like sometimes they come to her for advice and all that other stuff. She's trying, like she said, she tries to be the glue. But also, but also there are times she butts in when she doesn't really need to butt in. And whether she's right or wrong, she does do that. Yvette Wilson that plays Andell, I like her. All the characters are really great except for Dorian, which I will get to later because I got a big rant about that. As far as the writing's cool. It's very 90s. So, you know, anything about the problems in the 90s. I know a lot of people try to nitpick at it, but obviously these are problems in the 90s that I feel like people has gone through that can relate to. So these, especially like episodes like where her getting a tattoo, or, you know, dating someone, being 17, dating someone that's older. They talk about premarital sex. They talking about babies, and you get a lot of that. The narratives between her, Moesha and Frank, and, you know, her having to deal with Dee in the first season and a half. Her relationship with Moesha and Dee, because Dee is the stepmother instead of her actual mother because her original mother's deceased. And, you know, coping with that, and instead of her being the like head of the household, Dee is the mother and the head of the household. So, you know, she's having a hard time adjusting to that. I feel like that was good chemistry. The writing is very, very realistic. I would say that it's very realistic. Whether it'll make you happy or it'll piss you off, or even when you nitpick, I do think it's very realistic. And the first 2 seasons, the last 2 seasons, I feel like it falls off, and it's just because, and the only reason I feel like it was just because in the beginning, first season, in the first 4 seasons, I feel like, you know, when it came to Moesha, she wanted to be a writer. It's very evident from the beginning. She wanted to be a writer, and she has these intros and outros that have these soliloquies. She does poems. She wants to be an independent, you know, she talks about being an independent black woman and have these female black leaders that she can look up to and all that other stuff. So it really, in the first 4 seasons, I feel like it really projected that about her. The last 2 seasons, you don't really get that much. It's really more or less boy drama. The last 2 seasons is basically boy drama for Moesha, and I feel like that's where a lot of people say it fell off at, other than Dorian. And that's another thing. The thing, I feel like the one thing, and let's talk about the unique intros and the outros. So obviously it has her little theme song where she's in her deep thoughts and she's writing in her diary and all that. And you get this real soothing music. They stopped doing that around halfway through season 5. Like, you don't hear it no more. After halfway through season 5, it's just a cold open, then your situation, and then closing. So instead of just having that intro outro of her like reading in her diary and her thoughts and giving you things, and having these creative transitions that used to be in these first 4 seasons, they don't do it no more. After 5, it's just like rather standard transitions and all that other stuff. So it loses its uniqueness in the last 2 seasons, and anybody that's watched it, they can tell you that. And let's get on to the last 2 seasons. There's a lot of things I have a problem with in the last 2 seasons. Obviously, one is Dorian. Dorian is not my favorite character. Not a big fan of Raising. I always wonder why. And it's this show. It's really corny, and even though the show is called Moesha, the last 2 seasons, it should be called Dorian, because there were more stories pertaining to Dorian and his situation than Moesha and her going to college. I understand you wanting to keep the characters like Dee and Frank relevant. I understand you want to keep the characters like Dee and Frank and Miles relevant by putting Dorian in where Moesha was before. I understand they're doing that, but it really took away from Moesha and her college life. And it just, you know, at the start of the college, because, you know, it was a start with her college where, you know, she was given some problems, especially like one where like the teacher was being real racist, and he was like they had episodes like that, and then all of a sudden they just stopped doing episodes like that, and then it just became boy drama between her. Now the thing is, she's always had boy drama, but they were never like the main focus. It's just like she was just with these men that she liked, and then all of a sudden they just cut off. This whole last 2 seasons, it was like a love triangle between Hakeem and Moesha, and Hakeem and Q. And then there's one scene where Hakeem kisses Niecy, and that don't really go nowhere. And which, in my opinion, and this is just my solely opinion, I think Hakeem and Niecy would be a better couple than Hakeem and Moesha. But I get why Hakeem and Moesha are together, like the chemistry. But that's just me. But then again, I think I've had that type of relationships where I joke with people, especially with females. The ones I joke with the most is probably the one I like the most. So I can understand that. With that being said, I think Dorian is the worst character they could have brought on the TV. And then the storyline, it made Frank look bad, which is a lot of people had a problem with, because he was this stern, strict, no-nonsense father, and then you come to find out this man had an affair on his wife. And like people didn't know about it. He had a son that had to be adopted by his sister because the mother didn't want him and all that other stuff. And it's just a really stupid storyline. And the fact that he still, even though he knows that's his father, he still calls him Uncle Frank throughout the whole series. Like, you don't really call him dad. Like, anybody notice this? Even though he found out that's his real father, he doesn't call him dad. He just calls him Uncle Frank still. And then like, once he gets to a real sentiment, he finally calls him dad. So it's just like, why? And why? And then, you got the scene where he meets his real mom, and it really doesn't go nowhere. It doesn't. The stories, Dorian could have been easily left out of the season and you would not have noticed. But I do give props because that's his little brother. And Ray J, he's been sprinkled into the show like a couple times, playing different characters and all that other stuff. So I can understand him trying to like boost his career. And he was on the show with Sinbad that most people don't know about anyway. So that's another thing. But that was one problem I had about it, is the last 2 seasons and the lost father storyline. The whole love triangle, them not really focusing on her schoolwork and mostly focusing on boy problems. Like, she still goes to school, she talks about writing paper and all that stuff, but it doesn't really, it's like in the beginning, it's like if she had classes, like they had in school stuff that they had problems with and they solved it in school, her learning her life. In the earlier seasons, they done that. And the last 2 seasons, they kind of steered away from that. And the last finale episode, because I understand, like, by this time, Kim left and the Parkers was going on, and Yvette, I think the last season, Yvette Wilson left to be on the Parkers. So, obviously, Kim is really missed on there. But I think Shaw Jackson does a great being a second banana to Moesha at the same time. I think Shaw Jackson really did pick up the slack, which was there, and she was actually pretty funny. And I give kudos to her, because where a lot of people like Niecy, like to me, Niecy was very relatable, and she was actually pretty funny, and so was Hakeem. Hakeem and Niecy was pretty relatable, and like and this is why I thought they two together, because their banter had more chemistry than the stuff that Moesha and Hakeem was dealing with. So I personally would have preferred Hakeem to go with Niecy, but that, like I said, that's just me. So overall, I advise anybody to watch it. I think Moesha is still a good show. Even with the last 2 seasons, I still think Moesha is a really good show. It's very unique. It's one of them. I can speak. It's one of the most unique black sitcoms on TV, with this style, with its transitions, and even with the problems they're dealing with. You'll get to see a lot of celebrities that you don't see, like, that are really big and popping now. You can see a lot of those black celebrities are on this show, so you get to see them on there before, like, they blew up really, really, really big, because they were big, but they weren't really, 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 some of them were really, really, really big as they are now. So it's cool to see like a celebrity, a black celebrity, you go, ooh, I forgot she was on this show, and or I forgot he was on this show. Oh yeah, and you get all that. So the characters are really good. The writing, I still think, even though I'm not a fan of the last 2 seasons, the writing still holds together. It's just really stupid. And like Dorian is and as last of all, Dorian's the worst character on the show, still in my opinion. I didn't like him back then, don't like him now. And matter of fact, and then like the last episode, it leaves you on a cliffhanger, and we will never find out what the fuck happened. I don't want to spoil it here, so when you get to the final finale episode, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's really stupid the way they left off. It was literally the point where that's it. This is where they leave off at. And that was my whole thing. And I kind of wish they would solve that problem. But I love Brandy. I've always loved Brandy. I've always loved her work, from music to movies or her acting. I don't want to say I'm a big Brandy fan, but I am a fan of hers. Anytime I see Brandy, I think she's a beautiful person. She's a beautiful spirit and all that stuff. And I don't know, she's just a lovable person. And I think you will fall in love with this show as well. So let me know what y'all think. For those that remember watching Moesha, for those that watched Moesha, did you have fun going through this as much as I did? Because I did like the show, and I did have fun going through this and binge watching this. I couldn't wait to do this review. I think the next one is the game, so as soon as the game drops, I'm going to be doing that one. I'm going to try to binge watch all these shows and give y'all reviews on it. So let me know what y'all think. I would tell y'all to go ahead and watch Moesha. It's a real, you'll get through it. It doesn't drag. That's another thing. It doesn't drag. So with that being said, my name is Oscino and I'm out. Peace.
Fancy ass man wear glove of rings, flying around town in a tub of wings. Found out how to make love to fiends. He mixing that fudge with the drug of dreams. She too teenage to have a drug of choice, but she fuck with that Royce like she love Detroit. She rolled.
Pharaoh.
Aha!